What if Earth was running out of time? What if the oceans boiled away, the sky turned red, and the ground cracked beneath our feet? Where would humanity go, if anywhere at all? Not Mars, not another Earth, but a frozen moon, orbiting Jupiter, a place where the sun never rises, and the ocean lies buried beneath miles of ice. This is Europa, and the Europa Clipper, our silent messenger, will go there first, long before we ever do, because when Earth fades and silence falls, maybe Europa is where our story begins again. Chapter 1. When Earth is no longer home. We often think of Earth as eternal, a place that will always be here, blue, alive, familiar, but that's not true. Our planet has an expiration date, not tomorrow, not in 100 years, but one day, far into the future, Earth will become unrecognizable, and we know this, because we understand what's coming. The sun, the star that gave us life, will also bring our end. In about 5 billion years, the sun will run out of the hydrogen fuel it burns to shine. When that happens, it won't die quietly. Instead, it will grow, slowly, then suddenly, it will expand into a red giant, an enormous, bloated version of itself. As it swells, it will swallow Mercury, then Venus, and perhaps even Earth. But before that final moment, the heat from the growing sun will boil away our oceans. Our skies will fade. The atmosphere will break apart. Plants will die, then animals, then us. It won't happen in a single day. It will be slow, gradual, a silent extinction that spreads across the surface. If humans are still around when this begins, if we survive wars, disasters, and our own short-sighted choices, we will have no choice but to leave. And this is the question: where will we go? Most people would say, Mars. It's close. It has land. It's the natural next step. But Mars is not the answer, not for a permanent home. It's cold, dry, lifeless. And even if we terraform it, it doesn't have the one thing Earth gave us so freely: water in motion. But there is another place, one we don't usually think about, a place farther out, stranger, more mysterious, a moon, not a planet. Europa. Europa orbits Jupiter. From a distance, it looks dead, a smooth ball of ice floating in deep space. No color, no sunlight, no sign of life. But that's just the surface. Beneath that icy shell, something extraordinary might be waiting. Europa holds a secret, and NASA is sending a messenger to find out what it is. But before we talk about the mission, we need to understand why this place matters. Why Europa? Because in the darkest corners of our solar system, Europa may be the closest thing we have to a second chance. Let's go back, way back to Earth's earliest days. Before trees, before animals, even before the oceans turned blue. Life began here in a place we couldn't see, in darkness, at the bottom of the sea. Around volcanic vents, life found heat, minerals, and energy. It didn't need sunlight. It didn't need air. It just started. And Europa, beneath its icy surface, scientists believe there's a vast ocean, not a frozen one but liquid, warm, moving, maybe even deeper than Earth's oceans, and it's been there for billions of years. How is that possible? Because Jupiter's gravity pulls on Europa. It stretches the moon's insides like a rubber band. This motion creates heat, enough heat to keep the ocean below from freezing solid. Now imagine that, an ocean, hidden under ice, protected from radiation, with heat and chemicals from the moon's rocky floor, just like those early places on Earth, where life began. That's why Europa matters. That's why Europa might be our last hope. If Earth fades and Mars fails, Europa could be the place we turn to next. Not because it's easy, but because it might already be alive, or, at the very least, ready to welcome life. But let's be clear, Europa is not a paradise. Living there would be hard. The surface is deadly. Temperatures can drop below -160 degrees Celsius. Radiation from Jupiter would kill you in a few hours, and the ice is thick, maybe 15 to 20 kilometers deep. But it's not the surface that interests us. It's what's beneath. And that's where the Europa Clipper comes in. But before we introduce it, let's pause for a moment. Think about everything we've just described. Earth, dying. The sun, expanding. Oceans, gone. And far away, a moon, hidden beneath ice, holding an ocean we've never touched. It sounds like science fiction, but it's not. This is real. It's all happening. And soon, humanity will send a spacecraft to fly there, to search, to listen, to ask the question we've always wondered. Are we alone? And if we are, can we become more than just visitors in this universe? Before we go forward with that mission, let's return to the bigger picture. Because this story, this journey to Europa isn't just about science. It's about survival. It's about memory and legacy. It's about the idea that even when Earth disappears, the story of humanity doesn't have to. Somewhere out there, beyond Mars, beyond the asteroid belt, beneath the cold silence of Jupiter's shadow, a future might be waiting, and all we need to do is reach for it. Chapter 2, Europa. A frozen moon with liquid promise. Europa doesn't look special at first. In fact, it looks empty. There are no clouds, no mountains, no color, just a smooth, pale surface ice stretching in every direction. From space, it appears quiet, cold, forgotten. But like many things in the universe, what you see on the outside doesn't tell the whole story. Because beneath Europa's icy skin, there's movement, there's heat, and maybe there's life. Let's break that down. Europa is one of Jupiter's largest moons. It's slightly smaller than Earth's moon, but very different. For one, its surface is made almost entirely of water ice. But more importantly, that ice isn't solid all the way through. Beneath it, scientists believe, lies an ocean, not a frozen sea, a real, moving ocean, maybe even twice the volume of all the oceans on Earth combined. How is that possible? The secret lies in Europa's dance with Jupiter. You see, Europa doesn't orbit alone. It's locked in a gravitational rhythm with two of Jupiter's other moons, Io and Ganymede. As these moons tug and pull on each other, Europa's orbit becomes slightly stretched. That stretch causes Europa to flex, almost like it's breathing, and that motion creates friction deep inside the moon, friction that generates heat. That heat melts the inner layers of ice, creating a vast, subsurface ocean. So while the surface is frozen, deep below, water remains in motion. Warm, dark, protected. And this changes everything. Because where there's liquid water, there's the possibility of life. Let's go back to Earth for a moment. The oldest forms of life on our planet didn't need sunlight. They didn't need oxygen. They survived around hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the sea vents that released heat and minerals from deep within the Earth. In total darkness, life found a way to begin. Europa might have the same kind of vents. Deep in its ocean, cracks in the moon's rocky interior could release heat and chemicals into the water. These places, called black smokers, might offer just enough energy for simple organisms to survive. Bacteria, microbes, maybe something more. Of course, we don't know for sure, but the clues are there. In 2012, the Hubble Space Telescope detected something unexpected. Giant plumes of water vapor erupting from Europa's surface. These plumes rise hundreds of kilometers into space and then fall back down like icy geysers. If they really exist if they come from the underground ocean, they might carry signs of whatever lives below. Imagine that. Tiny drops of alien seawater floating in space, holding the building blocks of life. That's why Europa is so important. It's not just about surviving after Earth. It's about discovering something older, something hidden, something that reminds us we're not the center of the story. And here's the thing, Europa is not alone in its mystery. There are other ocean worlds out there. Enceladus, a moon of Saturn, also has plumes and a hidden sea. Titan has lakes of liquid methane. Ganymede might have a layered ocean too. But Europa remains the most promising. It's close, it's active, and we've been watching it for a long time. Ever since the Galileo spacecraft orbited Jupiter in the 1990s, scientists have been gathering data on Europa's magnetic field. That field tells us there's something conductive beneath the surface, something salty and vast. Everything points to a real ocean, a deep one, a restless one. And so the question becomes, what's in it? Not just water, not just rock, but maybe life. And not life as we know it, not fish or plants or jellyfish, but something simpler, or something stranger, something that's been evolving in the dark for billions of years, untouched by the surface, unaware of stars. What would it mean if we found that? How would it change the way we see ourselves? We often think of life as rare, fragile, a lucky accident. But if Europa has life completely separate from Earth, it means life might be common. It means the universe could be full of it. Not just intelligent life, but life in all its forms. Life that adapts, endures, waits. Europa becomes more than a moon. It becomes a mirror, a reminder that we are not unique. That Earth isn't the only world that breathes. Of course, we have to be careful, because exploring Europa won't be easy. We can't land and start digging. The ice is thick, the radiation is deadly. Even sending a small probe down through the crust would be incredibly hard. That's why the Europa Clipper won't try. Instead, it will orbit. It will observe. It will fly past Europa again and again, over 50 times, taking readings, analyzing data, watching for signs. It's not the dramatic kind of mission people dream of. There's no touchdown, no flag, no footsteps. But in its own quiet way, the Europa Clipper could change history. Because sometimes the most important discoveries happen far from the spotlight, in silence, in darkness, in places we may never touch. Europa is one of those places. A frozen moon, a buried ocean, a hidden story waiting to be told. As we stare into the future and imagine a time when Earth is no longer safe, Europa calls to something deep within us. Our curiosity, our fear, our hope. Because under all the science, under all the metal and code, there's a simple idea behind the mission. We want to know if we're alone, and if we're not, what else is out there, watching us, waiting for us, surviving in ways we've never imagined. Chapter 3, Europa Clipper, a mission for the distant future. Some missions are built to explore, others are built to listen. The Europa Clipper is both. In 2024, NASA launched a spacecraft unlike any other. Not because of how fast it travels, not because of how large it is, but because of what it represents. Europa Clipper is not going to land. It's not digging through ice. It won't bring back samples. Instead, it will fly by Europa again and again, each time collecting information from a different angle, with different tools, under different light. This might sound simple, but it's one of the most complex and meaningful space missions we've ever attempted. Let's start with the name. The word Clipper comes from the fast-sailing ships of the 19th century. Those ships carried people and goods across vast oceans with speed and precision. The Europa Clipper is a modern version of that idea, a digital sailboat cutting through space, crossing the ocean between worlds, not to deliver cargo, but to deliver answers. So what exactly is it looking for? The short answer: signs of life. The long answer: everything that might make life possible. Europa Clipper carries a suite of scientific instruments, each one designed to uncover a different piece of the puzzle. There are cameras that will map the surface in stunning detail, radar that can see through ice and reveal the structure beneath, a magnetometer to study Europa's magnetic field and confirm the presence of its subsurface ocean, spectrometers that can analyze the surface chemistry, searching for organics or salt, and detectors that can sniff particles in space, especially if Europa's water plumes shoot into orbit again. Together, these tools will let us scan the moon without ever touching it. Imagine flying over a frozen lake on Earth. You can't land, you can't break the ice, but with the right equipment, you can measure its depth, its temperature, the way light reflects off it, and the gases that rise from its surface. That's what Europa Clipper will do 50 times over. Each flyby will bring us closer to understanding what lies beneath. But there's something else worth mentioning. The Europa Clipper isn't going alone, not entirely. Along with the real spacecraft, there's another traveler in this story, a fictional one, a memory, a voice. Her name is Tuta. Tuta is not real, not in the way metal and machines are real. She's a character, a symbol, a storytelling lens. But for this journey, we'll let her speak. In our story, Tuta is a probe that's been drifting through the solar system for billions of years. She's old, ancient, she's seen planets born and destroyed. She remembers the first storms on Earth. She remembers Mars before it turned red. She remembers Saturn's rings forming and Pluto vanishing into the cold. She is memory itself, and when Tuta sees the Europa Clipper, she recognizes something: purpose, a younger machine, faster, sharper, but just as curious, just as hopeful. They pass each other in the silence of space, one going forward, one fading backward, and, in that moment, something beautiful happens. Tuta remembers when Earth first dreamed of leaving. She remembers the Voyager probes, the Mars rovers, the New Horizons flyby. She watches it dive toward Europa, not to conquer, not to claim, but to ask, because that's what Clipper is really doing. Asking, not just is there life here, but what is life, really, and where else might it bloom? It's not a loud question, not one shouted into the stars. It's quiet, careful, almost whispered, like standing on the edge of a vast forest and saying, "Hello, is anyone here?" That's what makes this mission different. We're not sending humans. We're not leaving flags. We're not taking samples. We're listening, watching, waiting. Because Europa is not a place we rush into. It's a sacred space in the vacuum of time. One that's been untouched for billions of years. If life exists there, it didn't come from Earth. It didn't come from us. It came from a separate story, a separate beginning. And that's a concept hard to grasp, because for most of our lives, Earth has been the center of everything, the source of life, the blueprint, the only example. But Europa challenges that idea. It says, what if you're not the only story that matters? That's why the Europa Clipper matters, not just as a spacecraft, not just as a science mission, but as a message to the universe and to ourselves, that we are ready to explore with humility, that we are curious, but not arrogant, that we want to understand before we interfere. In a way, this mission isn't just about Europa, it's about how we explore. Do we arrive with tools and force, or do we arrive with questions and care? Do we assume we already know what we're looking for, or do we leave room to be surprised? Europa Clipper is a mission of restraint, of patience. It's not flashy, it's not dramatic, but it's essential, because if Europa does hold life, even the smallest form of it, then we'll have found something no one expected. Another beginning, another thread in the web of the cosmos. And if Europa is silent, if there's nothing at all, then we've still learned something. We've still expanded our view. We've still made the quiet journey and looked beneath the ice. Tuta, drifting in the background, knows this. She watches, quietly, as the younger Clipper begins its work. And she smiles not with a face, not with emotion, but with memory, because she knows what this means. We are still looking, still wondering, still trying, even when Earth fades, even when stars die, even when silence falls over everything we've ever known. As long as we send missions like this, as long as we choose to ask, instead of assume, there is hope. Hope that we are not alone. Hope that life is more than chance. Hope that when the last human voice goes quiet, something we built will still be listening. Chapter 4. What if there is life on Europa? Let's pause here, just for a moment. Imagine the Clipper mission completes its journey. All flybys are successful. All instruments work perfectly. And then, among the waves of data and ice readings, we see something unexpected. Something alive. Not a fish, not a creature with eyes. Maybe not even something we would recognize at first. Maybe it's a trace of organic molecules arranged in a way that defies randomness. Maybe it's movement in a subsurface current, rhythmic, pulsing, persistent. Maybe it's chemistry so complex, it can only mean one thing: intent. If life exists under Europa's surface, we won't find it shouting. It will whisper. But even a whisper, in the silence of the cosmos, is enough to shake the foundations of everything we believe. Because this isn't Mars, where life might have once existed. This is now, present, active. It means Earth is not the exception, not the miracle, just one of many expressions of a universal story. It means the cosmos is alive in more ways than we imagined. But what does that actually mean? Life on Europa? To answer that, we must reframe our thinking. On Earth, life is tied to light. The sun feeds the plants, which feed the animals, which feed each other. But deep in our oceans, something different happens. Far from sunlight, near hydrothermal vents, life thrives in total darkness, using chemical energy from the Earth's core. These ecosystems exist completely separate from the sun. Entire food chains built on heat, pressure, and chemical reactions. Tiny organisms, worms, crabs, blind fish. They survive on what's called chemosynthesis, not photosynthesis. If life can do that here, why not there? Europa has the key ingredients: water, chemistry, and energy. Its ocean is salty, like ours. It may have vents. It may have tides created by Jupiter's massive gravity, stirring its waters with heat and motion. So life could be possible. But the next question is more difficult. What kind of life? It's tempting to imagine alien creatures, tentacled swimmers, glowing forms, intelligent eyes in the dark. But the truth is, we may find only the simplest beginnings: microbes, single-celled organisms, or even just the building blocks. And yet, even that would be enough, because those building blocks, if they formed independently, prove something profound. Life is not rare. If it happened on Europa and on Earth, it probably happened elsewhere too, maybe even everywhere. In that case, the universe is not an empty void waiting to be filled. It's already alive, already in bloom. We're just late to the realization. But suppose we go further. Suppose life on Europa didn't just begin. Suppose it's been evolving, slowly, patiently, beneath the ice, for billions of years. What would it become? It might still be microbial. Harsh environments don't favor complexity. But it could also be something unique, something adapted perfectly to that hidden sea, something that senses heat instead of light, that communicates through vibrations, that breathes sulfur instead of oxygen. It may have no concept of surface or sky. It may not even imagine a world above the ice. And here we are, breaking through that silence, peering down from orbit. Would it notice? Would it feel the presence of the Clipper, like a distant tremor, or a flicker of strange particles in its ocean? Would it even have the ability to sense change? Or are we simply invisible ghosts passing over a world that doesn't know we exist? The questions multiply, and each one is heavier than the last. What rights does this life have? What if it's vulnerable to contamination? If we found life, would we be able to resist touching it? History suggests we might not. From the moment humanity began exploring, we also began colonizing, disturbing. Even when we mean well, our presence changes the equation. We bring heat, we bring chemistry, we bring intention. That's why Clipper doesn't land. It's designed to observe, not interfere. To learn first, to listen. But listening comes with responsibility, because once we know life exists, we can't unknow it. We'll have to decide, do we protect it, or do we study it up close? Do we send more missions, drills, rovers, or do we leave it alone? And beyond all of that, how would this discovery change us? Not technologically, not scientifically, philosophically, spiritually, emotionally. For centuries, humans have seen themselves as special, a cosmic accident, a rare flame in the dark. If life exists on Europa, that story collapses. We are no longer alone. We are part of something larger, a biological thread that weaves through the stars. Maybe life is not the exception to the universe, but the expression of it, and that changes everything. It changes how we view ourselves. It changes how we view death. It changes what we mean when we say home. Some will find hope in that idea. Others will find fear, because if we are not unique, then we are not central. The universe doesn't revolve around us. It never did. But that doesn't make us smaller. It makes everything else bigger. It means that every quiet moon, every distant planet, every frozen sea could hold its own secret story. And Europa might be the first page we read. Back on Earth, in labs and lecture halls, people will debate what comes next. New missions, new ethics, new definitions of life. But somewhere in deep space, Tuta will still be drifting. She'll hear the faint signals from Clipper. She'll remember how Earth once looked up. She'll remember the day we reached out not to dominate, but to ask. And she'll know the answer matters. Because the moment we find life elsewhere, we begin to imagine life everywhere. And that changes not just science but destiny. Chapter 5. The legacy we leave behind. One day, the Europa Clipper will go silent. Its final signal will drift through space, across millions of miles, toward a small blue planet it will never see again. Its mission will end, its data collected, its instruments powered down, and just like that it will become another object floating in the dark. But its journey won't end there. Because what Clipper carries isn't just science. It carries meaning. It carries a question we've been asking since the first time we looked up at the stars. Are we alone? And even if the answer is silence, even if no signs of life emerge from Europa, so there is something deeply human in the asking, a kind of hope that survives even when the future does not. By the time the Clipper finishes its mission, Earth may already be changing. The oceans might rise, forests might vanish, heat waves, floods, blackouts. Some parts of the planet may become impossible to live in, and the people watching the Clipper's final transmissions may be doing so from underground shelters or cities, clinging to the last safe zones on Earth. In that future, the Clipper won't be just a spacecraft. It will be a memory, a reminder that before we turned inward, before we had to fight to survive, we once looked outward. We reached beyond our atmosphere, beyond our fears, to a moon of another world, and we listened for life. And maybe that alone is worth something. In a universe governed by decay and silence, choosing to hope is radical. We didn't send the Clipper for power or profit. We sent it to understand, to wonder, to leave behind a record of our curiosity. In a time of collapsing systems and lost forests, maybe that's the purest act of all. But there's more. The Clipper's legacy isn't just in what it might discover, it's in what it represents. It reminds us that exploration doesn't end when survival becomes hard. In fact, that's often when it matters most. When the world feels small and closing in, reaching outward becomes a way to breathe. Europa becomes more than a frozen moon. It becomes a kind of mirror. We look at it, and we see what we've lost and what we still have time to protect. If we can imagine life beneath Europa's ice, surely we can imagine life preserved here on this planet. Not just continued, but cared for, regrown, reimagined. But that requires humility, and time is running short. In a sense, the Clipper is also a message in a bottle, not just to another world but to our future selves. It says, you once believed in more. You once had the courage to launch something fragile across the void with no guarantee of answers. You once thought it was worth it to spend $1 billion not on weapons, not on walls but on a question, and that is worth remembering. Even if we don't find life, even if we only find silence, because the silence itself is part of the story, we can still learn from it, still grow from it. We learn that life, as we know it, is rare, fragile, worth protecting. And if we ever find that Earth is truly the only place it exists, then it becomes sacred, a seed in a universe of dust, a spark in a sea of cold. But let's allow ourselves, just once more, to imagine something else. Let's say the Clipper finds proof, not speculation, not chemistry, but life. And let's say the discovery reaches us not in a press conference, but in a quiet moment, a headline on a flickering screen, a whisper between people huddled in a dark room, waiting for the power to return. Let's say someone hears the news, looks up at the night sky, and for the first time in years, because even in the middle of collapse, we found something beautiful, and it didn't belong to us. It was out there, living its own story, waiting, not for rescue, not for attention, just existing. And somehow, knowing that helps, because it means the universe doesn't end when we do. It keeps going, telling new stories, carrying echoes of what we were and what we might become again. That's what legacy is. It's not monuments or empires, not billionaires or battles. Legacy is what we leave behind in the hearts of others and in the memory of the stars. The Clipper won't remember us, Europa won't thank us, but somewhere, deep in a future we'll never see, someone might stumble across the record, the data, the maps, the questions, and they'll understand. We were here, he asked, we reached, and for a brief moment, we believed in something greater than ourselves. That's the legacy of the Europa Clipper, not just a search for life, a reminder of our own. If this journey moved you have in just a little, consider joining us here. Subscribe, leave a comment, share your thoughts, because stories like this don't end, they echo. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there is listening.